Violent natural disasters have been a fact of human life since the beginning of the species, but the death counts of the most ancient of these disasters are lost to history. The Mediterranean island of Strogli, for example, is believed to have been completely wiped out by a volcanic eruption and ensuing tsunami that eradicated the entire Minoan civilization around 1500 BC. How many lives were lost? We'll never know. Natural disasters cause fascination in everyone, as is apparent from the enormous amounts of press coverage that they give. Haiti being a good example of this. We all fear the day that we might be caught in one, and perhaps that is the reason of our fascination. For other disasters, historians can at least make estimates. The following disasters are the most terrifying for which reasonably accurate death tolls exist. The lesson? While the chaos of a natural disaster can mean exact numbers are hard to come by, earthquakes and floods are the disasters most likely to kill large swaths of the population. Before we tell you about the most terrifying natural disasters to ever occur in history, give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, and subscribe to our channel, Haven. Opening our list is the typhoon tip. Pacific typhoons are generally more powerful than Atlantic hurricanes because typhoons have much more water over which they can gather strength. On October 12, 1979, Tip made history with the lowest air pressure ever recorded at sea level on Earth at 870 millibars. Standard sea level air pressure is 1013.25 millibars. The notorious Hurricane Andrew only made it to 922 millibars. Typhoon Tip had 1 minute sustained winds at 190 miles per hour, killing 99 people, a low number compared to some of the others on this list. 44 of the fatalities were fishermen in the open Pacific. Tip sank or grounded 8 ships. One of these was a giant freighter that the storm broke in half. Not only was it the strongest cyclone, but it was also the largest ever recorded, half the size of the United States, excluding Alaska. The Lake NYOS LIMNIC eruption. LIMNIC eruptions are one of the most bizarre natural disasters known. The Lake NYOS is a very remote area of the Cameroonian jungle, and it is not very large, only 1.2 miles by 0.75 miles, but it is quite deep at 682 feet. Under the bed, a magma chamber is leaking carbon dioxide into the water. This changes the water into carbonic acid. Carbon dioxide is 1.5 times denser than air, which is why it will not rise from the bottom of the lake unless shoved up by another force. On August 21, 1986, 1.6 million tons of carbon dioxide at the bottom of the lake suddenly erupted all at once and released a cloud of carbon dioxide from the lake. This cloud, being heavier than air, hugged the ground contours and blew out of the lake at 60 meters per hour, went downhill throughout the area of up to 30 meters per hour and displaced all the oxygen in several small villages, suffocating almost 1,800 people, not counting all their livestock. The force of the gas expulsion also blew out of the lake water itself in an 80-foot high tsunami that stripped the trees, shrubs, and soil off one side of the shore. The 1960 Chile earthquake. The most powerful earthquake ever recorded near Valdivia, Chile on May 22, 1960 at 2:11 p.m. local time, killing 6,000 people. Many more would have been had it not been for Chile's preparedness for earthquakes and the remote location of the epicenter. Eyewitnesses reported that the entire world appeared as if God had seized one end of it like a rope and slung it as hard as he could. 40% of the houses in Valdivia were razed to the ground. The shake was so strong that the Cordoncallo, a nearby active volcano, was ripped open and forced to erupt. The quake measured 9.5 in magnitude, and 35-foot high waves were recorded 6,000 miles away. Of all the seismic energy of the 20th century, including the 2004 Indian Ocean quake, 25% was concentrated in the 1960 Chile quake. It caused 82-foot high waves to travel down the Chilean coast. The quake possessed twice the surface energy yield the 2004 Indian Ocean quake and equaled 178 billion tons of TNT. This would have powered the entire United States at 2005 energy consumption levels for 740 years. The 2003 European heat wave. Europe is not accustomed to hot summers. Give them a break, hot summers almost never happen there. But in 2003, they got hit with one that would make the southeastern United States or the Australian outback sit back and marvel. In Europe, most of the homes built within the last 50 years before 2003 were not equipped with air conditioners, because none of them have ever been needed. Now, well over half of them have equipped themselves for the future. There were at least 14,802 deaths from the heat in France alone. Most of them, old people in nursing homes or in single-family homes without the ability to cool off. The heat dried up most of Europe, and severe forest fires broke out in Portugal. 2,000 people died from the heat. About 300 died in Germany, where the weather is usually very cold to delightfully mild. 141 in Spain, where the temperature actually gets into the 90s Fahrenheit once in a while, and 1,500 in the Netherlands. Multiple temperature records, having lasted since the 1700s, were broken, then broken again a week later at 106.7 Fahrenheit in Brno, Switzerland. This melted a lot of alpine glaciers into flash floods. 104.7 in Bavaria, Germany, 103 in Paris. The storm of the century. From March 12th to 13th, 1993, a cyclonic storm formed over the east coast of the United States, so vast in size that it caused a unique hodgepodge of severe weather. Rarely does a single storm cause blizzards from the Canadian-US border all the way down to Birmingham, Alabama, but this one did. Apart from that, Birmingham received 12 to 16 inches of snowfall in one day and night. This was accompanied everywhere with hurricane-force wind gusts of 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The Florida Panhandle received up to 4 inches, and the strange thing is that 5 people were killed by tornadoes in the middle of this blizzard. 300 people froze to death throughout the eastern half of the country when the electrical power was knocked out by falling trees. The Great Flood of 1931. The deadliest natural disaster ever recorded occurred through the winter, spring, and summer of 1931 was in central China. There were 3 major rivers draining this area, the Yangtze, the Yellow, and the Huai. All 3 flooded catastrophically because the winter snowstorms were particularly heavy in the mountains around the river basins. And when the spring began, all this snow melted and flowed into the rivers. Then the spring brought heavy rains. The cyclone season, which usually brings only 2 storms per year, brought 10, 7 of them in July. All this water swelled the 3 major rivers, especially the Yellow River, and because they drain a very large, very flat area of China, somewhere between 3.7 and 4 million people were drowned or starved. Nanjing City, China's capital at the time, became an island surrounded by over 100,000 square kilometers of water, more area than the state of Indiana or all of Portugal. The Tunguska explosion. On June 30th, 1909, at about 7:14 a.m. local time, an asteroid or comet plummeted over the lower Tunguska River in Krasnoyarsk, Russia, a remote area of Siberia, and detonated at an altitude of 3 to 6 miles. It exploded with the energy of the largest thermonuclear bomb in the United States has ever tested, the Castle Bravo bomb at 10 to 15 megatons. This is 1/3 the power of the largest thermonuclear weapon ever detonated, the Tsar Bomba. The airburst toppled about 80 million trees over 772 square miles of Siberian taiga and would have registered at 5.0 on the Richter scale. Thankfully, no one was killed because the nearest eyewitnesses were about 40 miles away from ground zero. They reported seeing a bright blue column of light streak across the sky, almost as bright as the sun, then a flash. For 100 miles around the epicenter, people were blown off their feet by the shockwave. Their clothes were scorched off, windows were shattered, and trees seared to death and blown over. Iron locks were snapped off barn doors. This detonation was more than sufficient to incinerate the entire population of Japan, the Sao Paulo metropolitan area, the Buenos Aires metropolitan area, or the entire United States, New England metropolitan from Boston to Washington, D.C. The 1999 Bridge Creek F5 tornado. On May 3, 1999, a tornado outbreak lasting for 3 days began with a bang, when an F5 formed at about 7:12 p.m. local time. This tornado was the most powerful windstorm ever recorded on Earth at 318 miles per hour. It killed 36 people and traveled northeast from Amber, Oklahoma, through Bridge Creek and Moore. Moore is the southern suburb of Oklahoma City, and had the tornado veered north into the city, It caused more deaths than any other tornado in history and became the costliest. 8,000 houses were obliterated. It shredded large vehicles with debris and then wrapped them around telephone poles, threw them completely through warehouses, whipped 2x4s through wheel hubs, and pine straw all the way through 8-inch thick pine trees. This was the first time that the local weather stations reported over the radio that if residents were not securely underground, they would be killed. Hiding under mattresses in bathtubs and ditches or under overpasses wasn't enough. The 1815 Tambora eruption. Mount Tambora is on the Sumbawa Island in South Indonesia. It erupted from April 6 to the 11th, 1815, but the worst of this was at the end, from the 10th to the 11th of April. The power is rated as 7 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, making this eruption the most powerful in recorded history, 4 times more powerful than the 1883 Krakatoa eruption. This means that the Tambora eruption was 52,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. All the vegetation on Sumbawa was incinerated or uprooted, mixed with ash, and washed out to sea. The trees formed rafts 3 miles across. Pumice ash does not mix well with water, and one of these rafts of ash and wood drifted all the way to Calcutta, India. 92,000 people were killed, mostly by starvation, the largest loss of life caused by volcanic eruption in recorded history. The finer ash remained in the atmosphere for 3 years and covered the entire planet, causing brilliant sunsets and the famous year without a summer in both North America and Europe. The ash disrupted the weather and caused global temperatures to decrease as much as 1.3 degrees Fahrenheit on average, an enormous drop. 1816 was the coldest year of the 1810s, and the 1810s was the coldest decade of the century because of the eruption. The 1958 Lituya Bay mega tsunami. Mega tsunamis were only theorized until July 9, 1958, when, in Lituya Bay, a very narrow fjord of the Alaskan Panhandle, a 7.7 magnitude earthquake shook 90 million tons of rock and glacier ice off the mountainside at the head of the bay. It dropped off all at once, almost vertically, and landed as a monolith into the bay's deep headwaters. This generated the highest wave ever recorded on Earth, 1,720 feet. That's 470 feet taller than the tip of the Empire State Building's antenna. It is, in fact, taller than all but the 5 tallest skyscrapers on Earth today, and most scientists agree that it had sufficient power to rip these buildings from their foundations. That about rounds up the most terrifying natural disasters in history. Which one is the most terrifying in your opinion? Leave it in the comments below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Idea Haven.